everyone, this is Kelly from Truth and Story, and I'm just here for a quick video because I don't know, I just wanted to chit chat about something I had stumbled on and how that might work into a reading. And so I thought I'd do a quick video. I've been doing a lot of cleaning out. Mother's Day in the United States is coming up, and I have told my daughter the only thing I want from her is that she come over and just help me declutter. I have a very small space and I like my space, but just over time, you know how it is, things just start to get really cluttery, and it's just helpful to have a person motivate you and help haul things down to the locker and that kind of stuff. So that's what we're going to be doing, which is coming up in a couple weeks. But I've been trying to do some, kind of going through some things myself. I was going through a couple of my cubicles and sorting through all of my different books on Buddhism. Again, always with the idea of, okay, what am I going to keep? What ones were important to me and which ones, I'm probably not going to access them again. And so, move them on to Goodwill or to a used bookstore or something like that. And somebody recently had asked me about a book that I would recommend for a beginner starting with Buddhism. Now, the first book I believe that I ever read on Buddhism versus Taoism was, I think it's called The Things That Scare Us by Pema Chodron, as well as When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. Those are the first two books I think that I read specifically on Buddhism, and I love all of her books, and I love all of Thich Nhat Hanh's. Those are the two what I would consider primary teachers for me. However, I recommend Buddhism Without Beliefs to many people because I think it's a really great just base introduction to Buddhism without any religious overtones. We have to remember that just as Christianity is a huge umbrella term for many different forms of Christianity, many different variations, variants, get big umbrella of Catholic and big umbrella over here of Protestant, and then you have all different things as well. So for someone to say they're Christian gives you a clue, right? It gives you a clue that they are probably believe in God the Father. They probably believe in Jesus as Savior for the most part, or they wouldn't probably call themselves Christians, which is Christ, Christ-like. So you can get a base idea, but there are many different particularities underneath that umbrella, just like for pagan, right? Pagan is a huge umbrella term that really doesn't tell you a whole lot, other than that you're probably not of the Abrahamic faiths, one of the Abrahamic faiths, and you're probably somebody who's in tune with nature to some degree. That generally, I think, is a fairly vague generalization. And then there's so many different things underneath the umbrella of pagan, and so on and so forth. You get my meaning. Buddhism is the same way. It is an extremely old way of perceiving the world, and so it has had many iterations as it moves around across continents and land masses and cultures. It morphs and it shifts and it changes, and it's continually, you can find all different variations of it. And some are more religious-like, to the degree of more like an actual religion, and some less like a religion. For me, the way that I practice Buddhism is more of a philosophy. It's much more, for me, religion indicates a god, usually at the head, or god or gods, or goddesses, or goddess, god, goddess, goddesses, or gods, anything, there's a divinity in place. Whereas with Buddhism, for me, for myself, there is not divinity or a god, and so there are enlightened people or enlightened beings, but they are not gods. To the way I practiced Buddhism, and so it was much more of a philosophy, much more a way of thinking. It's something that you can incorporate into many different belief systems. It's a way of seeing the world. It's a way of interacting with the world, and it's a way of being. So I think to be able to read a book that is kind of just stripped to the core, minus any religious connotations, I think is really helpful just to get a picture. That was a long ramble. I didn't mean to go on that far, but you know, you're used to me. But what I actually stumbled on that I hadn't seen for a while was this book. And I will put a link to in the description box to a website that hosts this book, and that I think also has a free PDF of this book. This is not a very well put together book. It looks as if, I can't even remember where I got it. I think on Amazon, I'm assuming, or on their website perhaps. It's definitely falling apart. It's, you know, seen a lot of use. This is called the Handbook for Handkind. This is similar in a way in that it really does also kind of strip some of the religion out in a really profound way. It talks about Buddhism in the different ways, as a truth, as a religion, as a psychology, as a philosophy. It kind of talks about that. It talks about where the Buddhista Bhikkhu, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, sees some of the problems with where it has kind of morphed and shifted towards religion and rituals and rites, and all these things have gained importance, in which, you know, are kind of missed the point of sort of the core a little bit. So he definitely has some opinions about that is for sure. But I found this to obviously be a very compelling book, and it did do a really good job of kind of summing up. You know, Buddhism loves to, like, a little bit, you know, counting things. So you have, I think, the 3 characteristics, the 4 noble truths, the 3 lusters. I know there are more things than just that. It just likes to do 3 of this and 4 of that, and, you know, this kind of thing. And it does a really good job of summing those things up. But that is neither here nor there. Again, I will put a link to this because you can read it for free. And I think it's not something that is pirated. It looks to be the company is just allowing that for people to have access to that. So I will put a link to that below if that's just something that you're interested in. But the point of this video is that while I was, I saw this, I was like, oh yeah, this is such a good book. It was good to kind of touch bases with it, and was skimming through it again. But right at the beginning, it reminded me of something that I had found interesting at the time, where it talks about Buddhism. What is Buddhism, right? So it goes through it does talk a lot about what things probably Buddhism is not, but it does talk about what is Buddhism. And one of the things that always stuck in my mind was, and it said, Buddhism is about what is what, right? The whole point of it is that just teaches you what is what. It teaches you what it is, right? What is. To know things as they really are. Not as you want them to be, not as you wish that they might be, not as you remember them to be, but just what they are. Strip away sort of the nostalgia, strip away the what you hope it to be in the future, and right here and now, what is what? What is what? How are things really? And that really stuck a lot with me, and it was very helpful actually to me. But what I thought was interesting is that it does talk a little bit about connecting it a little bit to the 3 marks, but it does talk about looking at whatever it is that you're dealing with. And understanding what is it about that you enjoy, even if it's a difficult situation, even if it's a situation that you really don't think that you want to be in. There is something that oftentimes that we are getting from that. Now, I'm not saying at all times, right? There are times in which we have zero power, especially children and childhood issues and things of that nature, when you have no ability to walk away from a situation. So this is not, I'm not in this video discussing those things, but as an adult, when we find ourselves in situations that are not ideal, we are often getting something from it, and we don't always know what that is, and we may not always be acknowledging what that is, but sometimes we are getting something from it. What is the danger, though, in the situation and in kind of staying because of what we're getting out of it? And then what is the escape, right? How can we escape from that particular cycle or situation that we are stuck in? And so that I thought was really interesting, and I did a few readings using that as sort of a base for a reading. So I'm calling this the What is What reading, because I thought it worked really well, and the readings that I did were really poignant and really powerful, and kind of a little bit confrontational, and then just asking you to just really look at what is what about a difficult situation, or a situation that isn't ideal. And I just thought it was, it just worked really well. So this is the Slow Holler Tarot, and that I use, and I use this as well. I'm not going to show the one that I used because it was actually really private, but it was really on point. And then I did some other ones as well, and it was, I just feel like there's a potential there for shedding some light in just a slightly different way, because we often say, okay, well, I'm in this work situation, right? Or I hate it. I hate my job. I want to get out of this job. I've got to get out of this job. I hate this job. Same thing with relationships. I hate this relationship. It's not going anywhere. I'm tired of it. But we still stay. We stay in situations in which sometimes, we feel like we have to, but there are sometimes ways out, and we just don't always take those ways, or we don't always acknowledge that we are gaining something. So we may not leave a relationship. Again, I am not talking about abusive situations or anything like that. And for the sake of this video, we're just, let's just, kind of stay with the situations that we all find ourselves in. That, there's generally a way out. It might take a while. It might take some, many steps between accomplishing it, but there are ways to change things that we don't like, but we often don't, because despite thinking that we don't like the situation, there is something that we gain. So that job that we just can't stand and we complain about all the time, we're obviously probably getting money out of it, right? We're probably getting compensated in a way that, it pays the bill. So we are getting something out of it. And that can be problematic, because then it keeps us in a job that is, just driving us insane. Relationships. Sometimes we stay in relationships, not because we really want to be there, not because it's perhaps the best place for us to be, but there's security in it. There's security in the known. There's sometimes financial security. It's all kinds of reasons why people stay in relationships that aren't ideal. And so we do, even though we are not enjoying whatever the situation is, we're getting something out of it, and that is then causing us to be stuck. And so then what's the way out? So I'm just kind of, just going to kind of give an example of this, what is what, reading, and let's see, I thought I'd throw it out there and see if this was, I had some profound experience with it, and so I thought that this would be, might be interesting to see other people try it and see if they find it to be helpful in particular situations that are problematic or complicated. So this one is for somebody who is, I'm not going to actually use, usually I do use actual readings. In this case, I'm not going to, because it does get quite personal. And so I do have some questions from people, but Nobody that, or I haven't checked with anybody that normally lets me. I have kind of carte blanche to read for them. This one can get quite personal, and so I'm just going to give some examples. So let's say that we have a relationship then that is complicated. And so I'm going to, the first position is, what are we getting out of the situation? There is enjoyment. The term enjoyment, I think, is kind of loose, but we're getting something from the situation. The second card is, what is then the danger of that? Of the situation, and then finally, again, I don't use reversals, what is the way out of the situation? So, oops. So in this first position, it's like, okay, what are we getting out of? What is this person might be getting out of the relationship? I'm also getting to know this particular deck, and I'm really enjoying the guidebook a lot, so I'm kind of looking to see. Unmake who you thought you were in order to make whole who you need to be. Give yourself permission to grow, change, evolve. Sometimes it is the tearing apart that makes it possible for you to remake and remember. So this is, because this is interesting, right? Because this is a bit of an unmaking card. So in this particular deck, this deck stands for giving yourself a chance to evolve. Well, that means to me, because all these cards are going to be, well, except for this one, the first two cards are in shadow, because it's an enjoyment that's keeping you trapped in some way. You're staying in a situation you maybe shouldn't be staying in, because there's something that you're getting out of it, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily healthy just because you're getting something out of it. And so for this, it would be that sense of comfort in who you are, who you think you are, that you've sort of built up this personification of you as maybe the martyr. You know, sometimes like, oh, you know, I'm in this terrible relationship, and you talk about it all the time. You talk about it to all your friends. I know people that, you know, they get something out of playing, not just playing the martyr, because sometimes they are in difficult situations, but they kind of keep themselves there because that is who they see themselves as. And should they, you know, take their power and sort of manifest what it is that they want to manifest for themselves, that is a huge piece of their identity that would be gone, and that's scary. That feels like unraveling, right? Sometimes it is simply that you have been in a relationship for so long that you literally can't see yourself as something else. And again, you would have to unravel everything of who you are in order to remake it into this new person. Been there, done that. It's a scary feeling. If you've been in a relationship for a very long time, or even, doesn't even have to be a very, very, whatever length of time you're in, it's enough. If it's long enough where you feel like this is your identity, and you don't know what it looks like to be on your own, that can be really scary and can keep you in a relationship, right, that maybe is over. I think that sometimes relationships are just over. Nobody has to be the bad guy, but it just isn't working for either party, but people stay because of, again, many different reasons. So I think this would be a very interesting card to explore in that scenario. The second position then would be, and this is Asada, Advana, and Nisarana, and I, again, probably slaughtering the way that you say those, but this idea of enjoyment. What is the danger in staying for that particular reason, and then what is the escape, or what is the way out? And so the danger, though, for the Hermit, now again, so I'm looking at this in shadow, not something that is positive, because we're looking at the danger in staying because of this. And there is that sense of isolation. This person is completely in this like egg structure, right? Completely removed from reality in some ways, removed from perhaps finding, the Hermit is going out to find wisdom, but the only thing that this person in this particular scenario would be getting is that sense of isolation without gaining the wisdom, and so you're just kind of further and further isolating yourself into this identity that is not constructive to who you are. And so you would look to I would see the Hermit in shadow as somebody who is removing themselves and isolating themselves, and their true self is being sort of completely wrapped up in this egg, and there's no wisdom that's being gained. There is no kind of moving off to gain wisdom and shine a light, that you can't see the light, because this would be in shadow. And that's the danger of staying because something is comfortable, because that's how you see yourself, not necessarily who you are, but how you see yourself, and you're kind of trapping yourself in that situation because it's scary to think of unraveling yourself. So this guidebook to me is really fascinating, and there's quite a few cards. I haven't gone through all of them one by one yet, but it does fascinate me, and mostly because of the guidebook for me personally on this deck. So then the question is, what is the, what's the way out then? Where is the escape here? So this is a branches, which would be a wands card, and the visionary is, I think, the very final one. So this is sort of that full potential of the suit here. Be thankful for the glowing magic of your cells and your soul. Feel your nervous system branching out its dendrites in search of the cosmos. Let the rich, fertile ground of your heart receive the lightning of your own genius. Build steadily the fire growing within you, and let it inspire you to inspire others. I love this, though, because this is that idea of start to feed the flame. Start to think about who you really are, minus this, again, following through with this reading, potential reading here. If this is somebody in a relationship who's staying simply because this is how they can't see themselves as something else, even if they know that this isn't good for them anymore, this isn't the best place to be. It may not even be good for the other person. Generally, that's the case. Generally, if a relationship's no longer healthy for you, then it's generally not healthy for the other person either. And so this idea of start to feed that flame, start to think about who you really are and who you really want to be. If you did unravel yourself and remake you, what would that look like? And start to feed that flame, start to build that flame up. We can't always go from 0 to 100. We like to say, yep, I'm just going to make that decision and I'm just gone, or I'm just going to fix whatever thing needs to be fixing. But very often we need to build that up. We need to start to build that energy up so that you can take that step. I think that's really kind of a beautiful idea of kind of grabbing hold of the tree. But the most important thing is that you're feeding this flame within yourself until it gives you to that point in which you can make those decisions that may need to be made. So I really like this. Like I said, I've done this for myself. I have done this for some other people, and I find it to be extremely powerful. And I would be curious to see if anybody else wants to try it, what they think about it. I definitely think it's a reading for things that are in shadow, although we can be entrapped by joy, fun things as well, where we're just getting stuck because we're getting sort of sidelined on something else that we need to kind of move on from. But I think for at least the initial instinct for me is that idea of seeing what is what, seeing what really is. Not what you remember it to be, not what you wish it's going to be in the future, but what is it right here and now? What are you getting out of the situation? How is that? So whatever you hear about what you're getting out of it, how is that dangerous, and how is that really start entrapping you? And then what is the way out? I think that I don't know, I found it to be interesting, and I thought perhaps somebody else might find it to be interesting, and so I thought I would hop on and do a video and see what you all think. So I hope that you found this to be worth watching, and that you have an absolutely wonderful rest of your weekend.